I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. Okay, so today on Pro Mindset Podcast, we have a young man who is a very successful financier, and he is a former college baseball player, went into the Major League draft. I'd like to welcome to the show today, Erik Averill.
Thanks for having me on. Excited for our conversation.
Okay, so Erik, you're with AWM Capital.
Yeah, AWM Capital. In the fancy terms, we're a multi-family office that specializes in helping young professional athletes or founders of companies maximize their net worth. And what we always talk about is our job to help our clients unlock the full potential of their net worth by helping them manage both their financial and human capital. It's a fancy way of saying at the end of the day, we partner with our clients to hopefully maximize the resources that they have to live the life that they've envisioned.
That's fantastic. For those out there that may not understand, what does human capital mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. So simply put, one of the biggest mistakes we see when it comes to just thinking about our resources and our money and our net worth is, unfortunately, most financial advisors reduce your life down to only your existing financial assets, where we actually believe the greatest driver of your net worth is your human capital, which is simply your future earning potential for the rest of your life. And then what we essentially do is there's a value that you can put on that, and you just discount it back based on the fact that it's not guaranteed, right? And depending on, if you're a doctor, your human capital is a little bit more certain because you're going to be employed for probably the next 20, 30 years. But for many of our professional athletes, what's going to make them extremely wealthy is their performance on the field. It's not guaranteed. We know that in the world of sports, but it is something that is the most important asset on their balance sheet.
No question about it. And candidly, human capital is also probably the biggest determining factor for an athlete's success in their sport.
No doubt about it. It's interesting. I'm reading It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad, and it is the famous mental performance coach for Russell Wilson. And in the foreword, Russell is detailing his first interactions with Trevor back at the IMG Academy, getting ready for the draft. And it's really talking about this as an athlete. It's all your human capital. Everybody's talented. It's who can actually maximize the human capital and convert it. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay, so let's go down memory lane. You are from Orange County in Southern California in Los Angeles. You were obviously an all-star high school baseball player and got a scholarship to pitch for Arizona State University. And in looking at your credentials, it looked like you were a heck of a player. Kind of describe for our audience your successes as an athlete in college.
Yeah, I would say I was a benefactor of being a member of some very good teams at Arizona State, and really this is how most of it happens. Is when we were there were multiple times we were ranked the number one team in the country. I had an opportunity to play in the College World Series, but over the 3 years I was able to be a starting pitcher on the weekend. For those that aren't familiar with baseball, it's kind of like the starting pitcher on Friday nights is your mainline guy. So I got to do that for a couple of years. And I always give credit to the teams that I was on, because it's a lot easier to pitch on a team when they score 13 runs a night. So when you just got to go out there and keep the runs under 13 and you're going to put yourself in a position to win. I was fortunate to play with guys like Dustin Pedroia and Andre Ethier and some really successful guys. So had a great run at Arizona State, 3 years. I was an All-American there, all Pac-10 multiple years. So that's a little bit of background of my time at Arizona State.
So let's even go back when you were a young man and perhaps maybe you were in middle school or high school before you became the guy. What was your driver? What was your motivation? What were your dreams? Perhaps, I'm guessing it was to play in the bigs. Share with our audience kind of where your mind was and what drove you.
Great question. You know, I was fortunate to be raised in an incredible family. Mom and dad were just great parents, continue to be. My dad played college baseball, so I think from before I even knew what was going on, I had a ball and a bat in my hands. I have an older brother, Brandon, who happens to be my co-founder and business partner, who is 2 years older. And like I think most little brothers, you really idolize your brother and your dad. And all I can remember, life was always on a baseball field. It was never forced. It was just something that we did. So the minute we were home in elementary school, right, it was drop the bags and onto the wiffle ball game in the front yard. And there was just this motivation. We loved the sport, our family vacations. It was going around the country and visiting these ballparks. And so I think it was, we had very clear pictures of role models and watched a ton of baseball. I knew from a very young age, like this was what we wanted to do. And this is what I was focused on. It was never a question. Any team we were on, my dad had always instilled in us the focus of hard work, of discipline, of being a good teammate, and playing for a championship. And so we're a very competitive household. And for me, there was never an option of just kind of participating in the sport. It was always driven to win.
Well, that's a perfect example. We're in an environment. So if you're a parent out there and you just establish an environment, you don't have to push. You don't have to force. You just have to create an environment that's fun, and the kids will normally follow. So you're a father now, and you have 3 kids. How do you plan on taking what you learned from your father and your mom and passing it on through your family?
Wow. Yeah. Hopefully I can be half as successful as my parents. But I think you really hit on it. It's trying to model that. I'm very blessed. Sadie, my wife, is just an incredible woman. She's an incredible athlete herself. And the two of us have talked about it's really our job to be curious and to discern how each of our children are uniquely created. Because it's not us pushing our agenda on them, but trying to really pull out their talents, their passions, and cultivate an environment where they get to try a lot of different things. So we try to structure a lot of our days and weekends around just giving them an ability to be curious and to learn. And I think once they reveal what they're interested in, it comes down to habits, formation, role model. And so that's how we hope to approach it. I mean, our children are very young, but we know that more is caught than taught. So a lot of it comes down to our daily routines and our habits as a family.
Well, you're way ahead of me because I have a daughter and 2 sons, and we just thought we would get our daughter into soccer because everybody played soccer. And she, usually when they're younger, the goalkeeper is the one that's the least interested in playing. And so our daughter was the goalkeeper. And she would literally, when the ball was on the other side of the field, her brain was never in the game. And so unfortunately for me, I was, I mirrored that. And so I would make business calls and get work done while I was watching the game. Mm-hmm. And then one day I said, "Hey, baby, do you really like soccer?" And she goes, "Oh, no." And I said, "Well, why you play?" "Well, because you and Mom take me to practice." And my wife and I looked at each other and said, "Okay, baby, Riley, what do you like to do?" She says, "What I do all the time." And I said, "Sing?" She goes, "Yeah." She sang in the shower. She sang in the car. She sang everywhere. And we were just not smart enough and didn't have the wisdom to recognize that that's where she was gifted and that's where her passion was. And so I think you're way ahead of the game in the sense that if you can expose your children to lots of things and let them reflect back to you what they like, and then provide the resources and the opportunities for them to develop into whatever they're going to develop into.
Yeah, I think it's so wise, and it's not that Sadie and I are smart. It's been more of a lot of conversations with our mentors, and I think the other unique example that happens or learning from being a former professional athlete is I don't have this grand illusion that I'm going to create a professional athlete out of my child, or this driver determination to believe that if they are privileged enough to play at the collegiate level or the professional level, that their identity is going to be wrapped up in that. So I would say there's also this guardrail for Sadie and I surrounding identity to be very careful of making their athletic prowess or really anything, whether that's being an artist or, or something else, a musician. It's just really around the identity of our children, of understanding that they're a complete person, not dependent on the performance of something. And because we see that on the opposite side of a lot of our former professional athlete community. I just see these families that cultivate their entire life around trying to achieve something, and being on the side of it where it's like, it's an incredible part of my story. I'm so thankful for the opportunities it's given me, but I'm also don't have a resentment because my parents never forced it on me. I see the opposite on the other side, where there's a lot of players that really resented their childhood. And so we're just really cognizant of that, of trying to make sure our kids' identities aren't tied up in the performance on the athletic side.
That's awesome, because being an agent for a long time, the thing that I see from time to time is that the athlete that makes it to the league becomes the patriarch of the family. Maybe the third son. The family circle revolves around that player, and it's dysfunctional, and it messes with his identity. It messes with other people in the family circle's identity. And then when the career comes to an end, which it always happens before they expect, now the whole family's going through an identity crisis. It's awesome if you can make more money than your dad did, but just because you do or may doesn't mean now you're treated like dad.
Right.
And so that's where that whole dysfunction comes in, because the professional athlete, is buying the car for his brother, not the father. So money and fame in professional sports create some unique challenges for families that they don't even see coming.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're talking our wheelhouse. It's one of the passions that we have coming out of the professional athlete community is, unfortunately, there's this, I would say, this cultural narrative that athletes are entitled and they're horrible with their money. But when you actually take a step back and look at how it happens in a situation, it's really a young adult, a teenager, or in the early 20s coming into a situation where they're dropped this sudden wealth on themselves without either the skill set on how to manage it, and also just the life maturity of how do you maintain relationships that are now not dependent on somebody having access to money. And you see this dysfunction happen in relationships. Like you say, we have this, I wrote a letter a few years ago to parents that essentially said, don't stop parenting your child. Is we see that when the young athlete becomes so important in being a top athlete, parents stop being the parent in the relationship, and that's just dysfunctional. And so I couldn't agree with you more. That's hopefully something we're trying to help equip not only our young athlete clients, but eventually when they get married or with their families, of how do we maintain healthy relationships and allow this money to be a blessing and not a curse.
Okay, so you bring up a great point, which is, what are the typical dysfunctions and challenges that athletes have when they come into money? And one of which we've just talked about, which is the family gets out of sorts, so to speak. Parents start putting their son or daughter on a pedestal, and it's not healthy for anybody. What other things do athletes find challenging, but they show up when they show up? and you should be aware that they're coming if you have the fortune to get into the professional league where you're getting paid to do something you used to do for free.
It's a great question. I've heard it said that money is only a magnifier. So it's not like it comes with all of the skill sets attached to it of how to manage it. It's if you're an unhappy person, you're just going to be a more unhappy person. If you're already a generous person, you're going to have more things to be more generous with. And so why that's really important is you have to think of the skill set and the context of what happens when the byproduct comes. So, i.e., a player is drafted and all of a sudden has $20 million dropped on him. He's still a 22-year-old kid or a 25-year-old with no skill set around it. And so now people in industry treat him as if, because you have this money, you're supposed to be this really educated business person or acumen. One of the things I agree with, but I think it's really faulty advice, is we all tell our athletes, you need to think about yourself as a CEO. You got to be a business person. And yet, why would we expect them to be successful? Because nobody's taught them how to be a business person. They've never ran a company. How are they going to be a chief executive officer? And so what usually happens, what I would say is, this is where I'm on the athlete side. Most athletes recognize I don't have those tools and skill sets, and so they go to the trusted advisor community. They hire a sports agent. Their agent usually helps them hire a financial advisor, yet neither the agent nor the financial advisor are qualified experts. A lot of times these are unqualified experts that just have relationships that can get access to the young player. And so one of the first things I would say for the young athlete who's going to get an opportunity to play at the professional ranks is you have to be extremely careful of who you let into your inner circle and understand that all titles are not created equal. Not all agents are the same. Not all financial advisors are the same. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I'd really encourage, one of the key components of an advisory team that very few people actually add is somebody to help them navigate the relationship side of their life. And what I mean by that is this could be a pastor, it could be a counselor, a therapist, of just going, most family and friends aren't trying to hurt the athlete. They just don't know any better. And so they don't know the inner workings of what the athlete's going through and the pressure that's put on them when somebody asks for money or for help. But if you get out in front of it early on and actually have a family meeting and say, all right, this is how we want to be successful as a family, and this is how we want to be successful in a friendship, working through that stuff is just as important as getting the money.
No doubt about it. I had a client, won't name names, but his father was instrumental in him getting a college scholarship, getting to the NFL. He was drafted. He got his big payday in a second deal, and his father turned on him and expected his son to start paying for things that he shouldn't have to pay for.
Yeah.
And so I had to step in and actually write a letter over my client's signature that communicated his frustrations and recommendations for a solution. And I emailed it back and forth with my client a handful of times because I wanted it to be his words, his reasons, his letter, because his name was going to be at the bottom of it. And now he's actually a coach in the NFL, and he's got a phenomenal relationship with his father. I think it's important to not sweep those types of things under the carpet and hope they get better. It's better just to put it out there and almost take a legal approach, which is, hey, this is what I was hoping you would do. This is what I was thinking. This is what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting this. I knew I want the joy of giving you something. I don't want the obligation of paying for something.
Yes. That's a powerful story, and it's so helpful. I think we try to do the same thing with a lot of our clients, is actually having family meetings of saying this isn't happening in a vacuum. There are real relationships, and so a lot of times just the awareness and the openness to do what you said of what are the expectations, let's get them out there, what are the questions, because what we also see, unfortunately, is players really want to impact their families in a multi-generational way, but because they don't have a proactive plan or they have the team in place, it becomes a really expensive lifestyle during their careers. And then there's the detrimental effect once the paychecks stop. And so not only have you actually not helped your family change the trajectory of their futures, you've hurt them. So we talk a lot about having a multi-generational impact and legacy to leave, which means we sit down with the family during the career to say, hey, if we actually want to be able to help over the next 60 years, we can't spend all the money today. And so I love the approach of that you were able to help your client and maintain a healthy relationship between a father and a son, because that's what's most important.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go back to your sports career and share with us what your mountaintop experience was. What was the pinnacle of your career? Was it getting drafted? Was it being, MVP of the College World Series? Was it being All-American? Was it winning a certain game? And then share with our audience the Valley experience, whether it was when you were injured, you hurt your elbow, or something else.
Yeah. So the both are very easy to answer, I think, as every athlete would be able to tell you, right? Is for me the pinnacle moment, and I had a lot of great opportunities. Was able to be on 3 or 4 teams that won championships, but it goes back to my sophomore year in high school. My brother was a senior. We were on the same varsity baseball team at Villa Park High School in Orange County. In the state of California, we're so big, so we don't have state playoffs. We have section playoffs. We won the CIF title. We got to play at Dodger Stadium at the time. We were playing the number 1 team in the country, West Torrance High School, and so as a sophomore in high school, I got to pitch at Dodger Stadium and get the win in that game, and just to win a championship, with my brother, but with our childhood friends. Most of us had grown up playing Little League together through elementary school, junior high, and high school. So that was definitely the pinnacle. And I think it was also being a naive sophomore with no stress of the business side of the sport available. It was still just a boys' game. So definitely the mountaintop peak. And then I would say on the flip side, the ultimate low is the business reality of professional sports. So I'd had Tommy John surgery in 2007 that interrupted the middle of my career, and it takes about a year and a half to come back from a physical therapy standpoint for Tommy John surgery, and it was June 2008. I remember it like it was yesterday. Came into to the locker room early in the morning, and pitching coach said, "Hey, the farm director wants to talk to you." And at that point, you know what's going to happen. And so, being a 20, I think it was 25 at that time, to walk into an office and have someone tell you, "Hey, we appreciate your contribution, but at this point, we're going to go ahead and release you. We think your time here with the Detroit Tigers organization is over." And that was truthfully the first time in my athletic career that I went from being someone who was known as like who you give the ball to in a big game to we don't think that you're good enough to play professional baseball. And every emotion that you can think about in that situation, more of shock, the stress of like my identity has been so tied in being this professional athlete for so long, and they're literally ripping out a piece of your soul in this conversation, and it's very businesslike. I think for every athlete knows this, but it's for them, it's kind of like a formality. It happens every day. And so they're not worried about your emotions. It's literally like, we've got to release 3 other guys today. So things come in, 2-minute conversation, pack your bags, get in your car and get off our facility. So, fortunately that wasn't the end of my professional story. I got to play a little bit longer after that, but, man, that was a difficult day and a difficult season.
Erik's absolutely correct. When guys get cut, it's like, hey, do you want ham and cheese or do you want turkey for lunch today? It's not emotional for them. And on the flip side, the guy that's receiving the news, it's everything that he's wanted and dreamed. No matter how balanced you are, you have to put your heart and soul into your sport or you can't make it. You've had to make so many sacrifices in your college career, high school career, to get up to that point. And so let's go to the week to 2 weeks after getting let go. How did you reestablish your identity? How did you get your mojo back? Did you not lose it? Did you lose it for a minute? Obviously, you moved on to another organization. How did you approach that second opportunity? Did you have alligator arms in the sense that you didn't want to stick yourself out so far that you were going to get chopped up again?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the things that I was unprepared for that nobody really talks about is it's not just you getting released. It's the emotions of your wife, your parents, your friends. It's this lie of this shame, this public shame that it's like, I want to go into hiding because the last thing I want to do is call my parents and, have to deal with, it's not just my career ending, right? It's my parents who've invested their time and their money for years and years. So what I wasn't prepared for was just how difficult some of those conversations were. And then also it was an unwarranted shame, but the insecurity of like, is anybody like, do they think about me less because I got released or I'm not, not this athlete anymore? So I would say the first 48 hours like is this mixed emotion of you get really pissed off, mad at the organization, then very insecure and scared of just like what's next. And so luckily for me, faith has always been a big part of who I am and my story. So I knew some truths that I was only not defined by the sport. But then I also had some very close mentors and friends that had actually gone through it themselves. They were on a different side of their careers that I was able to talk through it with them, which was super helpful of just to say, hey, obviously, do you still want to continue to play? Do you think you're capable? All right, well, what's the game plan? And I think very much getting out of it, they essentially let me have my, 24 to 48 hours of my pity party. And then it was come back to the surface. Let's talk about what is in your control. Let's not focus on the emotions and the what ifs and the assumptions, but what's the game plan to move forward? And that was actually very helpful, was to know we've got a plan in place. Let's do that. And so I was able to be re-signed pretty quickly by a different organization and get back to work. I would tell you the regrets, because every athlete has them outside of, maybe the few, the Jordans of the world, which I'm sure he does as well. But the next organization I went in more timid. It was more fearful of getting released than playing uninhibited, hair on fire, just letting your talent come through. It was much more of a cautious, and ultimately it wasn't long before. It was only one more season before my career was over.
Okay, so there's a couple of thoughts I'd like to throw out there. One is that very few people get to a high enough platform in their profession that they get told what you said, quote unquote, we don't think you're good enough to play pro baseball for us. Very few people get there. And the higher you get up, higher echelon you attain, the more difficult that is to hear. Because you to get to that level, to get past the college level, get in the pro level, but it's like you always think it's going to happen to somebody else. And that some people can't recover. And just being candid with you, now this is the agent perspective coming out, you didn't recover from that completely. You didn't heal from that completely. because you didn't let it go on the next one. And
Right.
that's the default mode for 99% of the people that are in that same situation. So it's almost like, as you as a advisor for athletes, when they experience this kind of, waiver, termination, cut, whatever you want to call it, you need to go to work and share with them, hey, I've been there. This is what most people are going to do. I did it. This is not the recipe for success.
Right.
You got to say, almost F them. My identity is good. My skill set is good. My talent is okay. I'm going to be fine. And I'm just waiting for that next team to recognize that. And then I'm going to go balls to the wall. And I've had a few guys do that, but most of the guys do what you did, which is the normal thing to do, because, man, you don't want to get hurt again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's the regrets of when I really looked back at the way that I approached my career. I had a very naive belief that working hard enough, or just having good work ethic was enough. I always knew talent wasn't enough, but it was, hey, did I work out hard enough? Did I make sure that I was putting my throwing program into place, XYZ? One of the biggest holes that I saw throughout my career, the lack of skill set and the trial of what to do when you got knocked down, right? When you got kicked in the face, when you got knocked off your game plan, how did you recover from adversity? And we see this day in and day out with our clients across all the different sports is, unfortunately for a lot of them, the first time they fail was at the highest level and they don't recover, just what you said, which is the saddest thing, because we push guys so hard on the mental training, the peak performance side is you have to spend your days trying to force yourself to be uncomfortable. Like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That way you know how to respond when adversity hits. So I could not agree with you more on that point about my own career and for future athletes.
And then the second thing, Erik, is there's two situations that are very similar. One is right before the draft, especially in the NFL business, when prospects are asked by family members, good intentioned friends, coaches, hey, how high are you going to get drafted? Who do you think is going to draft you? It's a question you can't answer because you don't know. And then the second question that is related to that, it's like a first cousin to that question, is, well, what happened? When you get released, what could you have done better? Did you offend somebody? Because they're not going to doubt your talent. So you had to do something off the field or, off the court that caused somebody not to like you. And the answer is none of the above.
Yeah.
It's a business. And in the business, sometimes they have higher hopes for somebody else for their own reasons that they don't have to justify.
Yep.
And there's times, and I know guys don't believe this when you tell them, but sometimes the best player doesn't succeed. Sometimes it's the player that they choose because they've got a plan for him and he's not there yet. And maybe most of the time he never gets there, but that was their plan. That's why Wes Welker was let go by the Chargers after 3 weeks. He roomed with one of my clients with the Chargers. He was let go after 3 weeks. They didn't give him a chance. And yet he goes to Miami and kills it. And next thing you know, Belichick signs him and he ends up being a superstar. And now he's coaching in San Francisco. So if it was based on talent, he shouldn't have been let go, but they didn't give him a chance.
Yeah, I think there's so much clarity if you understand that, and it also allows you to move beyond the emotion of taking it personal. It's one of the unique perspectives we try to provide for our clients of the fact that my brother and I, we own a business. We have 14 employees, and our core expertise is actually evaluating companies to deploy capital in to make investments. And what you really help our athletes realize is just let's walk through the business of sports. So like in baseball, it's a $10 billion industry. In explaining to them of let's lay out the framework of how these presidents and these general managers are making decisions and redefining what success is, because it's actually how to be most profitable, not always necessarily to win the Super Bowl or to win the most games in baseball. Now, obviously, those can lead to more revenues for the organization, but when it's really you take it to they're looking at you in an investment in a piece of their portfolio. Do you actually fit into it? So you may be completely talented. You're just in the wrong organization. And those organizations know that, and they're going to get rid of you after a few weeks, And so I think trying to educate our clients so that they can stop thinking about it as a poor me or what's wrong with me as much as it is, what are my skill sets? How do I increase my value? And how do I best align with the company that needs my skill set?
No doubt about it. And I also think that organizations look for good fits. Their definition of a good fit is defined solely by them. There could be an athlete that's an awesome fit. He's a cultural booster in the locker room or the clubhouse. They don't see it. They don't think he's a good fit. Yeah. So I really think that if you have the God-given talent and you've added development of your skills through hard work, and you've got the mindset to perform above your abilities, and the team that you're on first doesn't recognize that, don't quit. Don't lose hope. Don't lose confidence. Just understand that it's better for you to move on. You're going to have, there's been the list of athletes over the years in multiple sports, especially in the pros, that have had more success after getting cut by their first team than they ever had with their first team. That list is long.
Very long.
Right? But they also have to have that perspective and mindset that, hey, it didn't work out, but I'm not going to let it diminish my effort, diminish my belief in myself, diminish my goals, diminish anything, my dream. And so that's the thing. When you mentioned, you hit the nail on the head, Erik. How do you recover? For most athletes, it's a straight line, and that straight line has a slope that's rising all through high school and college. And then when they get to the pros, it perhaps is still going that way. Take Russell Wilson. He's got an ascending line, even to this day. Arguably, he might be the best quarterback in the NFL. Who knows? It's a debate. It's 4 or 5 guys. It could be it. But at some point in time, he's going to hit failure. At some point in time, his coaches are going to quit on him. At some point in time, I guarantee it, the Seattle Seahawks are going to lose faith in him as their franchise quarterback. How is Russell Wilson going to respond?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's really the lesson for all of us, right? Is it's not when things are going good. It's your character is revealed when everything hits the fan. And have you done the deep work? Have you done the work necessary during peacetime so that when wartime hits, that you can respond and be successful and not fold? So it's absolutely the differentiator from the high performers and those that are just talented that unfortunately haven't done the work and fold under the pressure.
So Erik, you started a company with a couple partners, one being your brother Brandon, and it's AWM Capital. And you've worked at big money houses before. You've got a history. You have experience working at big money houses. What sets you apart from those guys? Why would an athlete want to work with you? And then while he works with you, how is he going to benefit from working with you guys?
Yeah, great question. And you got to stick with me. I want to share my personal experience of what it's like to be a professional athlete in a vulnerable situation, because this is the typical situation that happens. So, I sign out of Arizona State and have a signing bonus. And so naturally, I start to ask my trusted community, like, what do you do? What do you do with this? I recognize I'm 21 years old, even though I was a finance major at Arizona State. I come from a middle-class family in Orange County, but they don't know the athlete side of it. And it's like, well, the sports agent recommended this guy, that he's part of the ASU Booster alumni world, and he works with some of these big-name baseball players. And so the naive decision I made as an athlete in that time was check the box. He's got some all-star players and a Hall of Fame player, and he works at a big company name. And so it's check the box of, oh, I recognize that brand. It's on all the billboards. He works with some athletes. My agent recommended him. I'm good to go. And unfortunately, this happens all the time. Well, fast forward that to the financial crisis. This individual had put me all in individual stocks. So he's a stock picker, which everybody knows today, evidence-based, that stock picking is a fool's game. He actually had no advanced credentials. These big brokerage houses, your Merrill Lynch's, your Morgan Stanley's, your UBS's, your Wells Fargo's, it's illegal for them to give tax advice, yet you're in the highest tax bracket as a professional athlete. They are really, their ideal client is the mass affluent. They have, between the four big names, they have 50,000 financial advisors and hundreds of thousands of clients. But none of them actually really look like you, and they don't have the expertise to meet your customized needs. And so the best analogy is it is just like our professional careers is we're the best in the world at what we do in baseball. There's only 750 players in the entire world that are Major League Baseball players. How do you separate out who is the best suited for you? And so every athlete gets this analogy is if you end up needing a surgery, you just don't go down the street to the orthopedic surgeon who's a qualified doctor and is a great doctor. And if your goal is to get just back and playing with your kids, it's probably a good fit. But if you're trying to be at the top of your game, the best in the world, you want to know that there's a Dr. Andrews that has specialized and has proven expertise of helping an athlete in their situation. And that's really what we do on the financial side is first and foremost, we're not built for everybody. We're built specifically for very young, affluent, complex people like founders of companies and professional athletes. Number two, there's 5 of us that are former professional athletes. We actually know the psychology, the ins and outs of what you're going through. And then we're also completely independent, and we're what's called a fiduciary. It's a fancy term that means we have to do what's legally in your best interest. We don't have our own products. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're literally trying to align as your partner. And so I think it's those things. Number one is we work specifically with our clientele that are professional athletes. We're structured in a way that's to do it in your best interest, and we've been there before. And so that's what really separates us from the majority of what we would call Wall Street. We're not interested in Wall Street's profits. We're interested in your family's goals and making them a reality.
Okay, Erik, how do people find you?
Yeah, great question. So we got a podcast that you can listen to. We've written a book, but just go to awmcapital.com, awmcap.com. That is where we're at. The good news is if you type in athlete financial advisor, athlete wealth management, we're going to be the first company that pops up on Google. Reach out to us directly. We'd love to be able to just provide education and resources that will help any athlete on their journey. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I want you to have an awesome weekend with the fam.
Thank you so much. It was a privilege and an honor to be on it. Enjoy time with the boys up there.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.